Can your sandwich have too much meat on it? If you answered no, then you're going to love our pick for best sandwich on diners, drive-ins, and dives. When you hear the word sloppy in the context of a sandwich, you probably immediately think of a sloppy Joe. While eating a sloppy Joe when you were a kid, it was perfectly okay to wear sauce all over your face while you stared down at the heaping mess of ground beef on your plate. Sloppy is good, which was perfectly clear when Guy Fieri headed to a Boston spot called Sal's to get his sloppy Jacques on. Sal's co-owner and chef Chin Kuo stuffed a brioche bun full of braised beef and bacon and then topped it with pickled red onions for a vinegary bite that cuts through the richness of the meat.
The sloppy Jacques is one of those sandwiches that just kind of reminds you of childhood.
Sometimes the greatest part about food is the nostalgia that comes with it. After a couple bites, you could tell Fieri was a huge fan, as he concluded that the sloppy Jacques pushed the boundaries of sloppy Joes. Pork belly is one of the most decadent cuts of meat you can possibly eat. It's taken from an outrageously tender area of the pig, so it's chock full of glistening, melt-in-your-mouth fat. When you take the first bite, your palate is coated with a rich glaze that sits in your mouth long after you swallow, so you might think that you'd be hard-pressed to find a way to make pork belly even better. Not so, according to Bunk Sandwiches in Portland, Oregon, which slaps that meat onto a Rueben and serves it between two pieces of toasted bread. The process begins when the chef grinds up a mixture of chili flakes, black pepper, fennel seed, salt, and sugar, then spreads it onto a pan, lays the slab of pork belly right on top, and rubs the seasoning in. After the meat sits for a couple of days to soak up all the flavor, he slow roasts it for 4 hours. Once it develops that crispy golden outer crust, he slices it up and starts the sandwich construction job. On 2 pieces of dark rye bread, the chef slathers homemade Russian dressing, Swiss cheese, sauerkraut, and, of course, the pork belly. After a quick press on the panini grill, Fieri dug in, and you can tell by the look on his face that he wishes he could eat one of these every day. Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives makes sure to visit spots around the country that serve unique fare that you can't find anywhere else. It doesn't just highlight great tasting food, it also points out small locales with one-of-a-kind options that might otherwise be overlooked by those traveling through the area. That's why Guy Fieri made his way to Somers Point, New Jersey, to snag a crab cake grilled cheese at the Grilled Cheese and Crab Cake Company. This place is located right near the boardwalk in Ocean City, so it's no surprise that they have crab cakes on the menu. Chef Steve Novak was more than happy to walk Fieri through the crab cake grilled cheese making process. Once the binding mixture is thoroughly mixed, Novak dumps in a heaping bucket of jumbo lump crab meat. Next, an ice cream scoop full of crab meat gets plopped onto a flat grill, and while that sizzles to perfection, Novak toasts 2 pieces of bread draped in Monterey Jack cheese and tomatoes. Once the crab cake finishes, it's placed on top of the bread. Mission accomplished. Fieri did note that the crab cake is a little creamier than most people would expect, but that doesn't stop him from giving the chef a well-deserved fist bump of appreciation. If someone ever asks you if you see the hot blonde, you'd probably expect to find an attractive person somewhere nearby, but that actually couldn't be further from the truth if you're in Dad's Kitchen in Sacramento, California. They serve up a panini there called the Hot Blonde that's sure to turn heads in a totally different way. So naturally, Guy Fieri had to take a road trip out west to see what all the fuss was about. One thing Fieri wants to know about is if the sandwich's name is a reference to him. To his dismay, it's not, but that's okay because it's delicious either way. The ingredients are layered on grilled sourdough and consist of fresh roasted chicken, avocado, cucumbers, tomatoes, roasted red onions, Swiss cheese, garlic spread, brown mustard, and a sauce called pepper plant that adds a nice little kick of heat to the whole thing.
This was the kind of sandwich my mom would flip out for.
Unfortunately, Mama Flavortown didn't join her son on the trip, but we hope she got a taste of the hot blonde eventually. You might remember times when you were a kid and you would rip off small pieces of bread and feed the ducks swimming around a pond. As it turns out, eating duck is also pretty tasty. It has a tenderness that you won't find in pork or beef, so if you're a meat lover, you owe it to yourself to try some. Guy Fieri is never one to back down from a Flavortown journey, so he ventured out to a place called Meat Press in Ottawa, Canada, and discovered that our neighbors up north know exactly how to get their duck on. Meat Press makes their own buns, and the duck they use sits in a dry rub for 10 whole days before it's cooked, so it's loaded with flavor by the time it hits the smoker. A mixture of cherry and maple wood gives it a super smoky essence, and once it comes out, Fieri's excitement is palpable. Before the duck is sliced, Meat Press chef Etienne Courrier renders down homemade bacon and onions, and then he adds a handful of cabbage to the same pot. As soon as the ingredients cook down, Courrier pipes homemade mayo onto the fresh buns, slices the duck breast super thin, and then piles everything on in one glorious glistening heap.
Brother, I'm gonna be honest with you.
that changes the world of duck.
It's not easy to find food in the United States that genuinely rivals the authentic flavors of a foreign country. Simply put, it's usually nowhere near what the locals make. But when Guy Fieri learned of a Peruvian sandwich spot called J28 Sandwich Bar in Hollywood, Florida, he had to see why people kept coming back again and again. J28 is a reference to Peru's Independence Day of July 28th, and the restaurant actually also opened its doors on July 28th. Fieri arrived ready to bite into one of their most popular sandwiches, the Peruvian Chicharron. It starts with marinated pork belly that sits overnight in a delicious concoction of ginger, sugar, ají amarillo, garlic paste, and soy sauce, among a few other things. Once the belly is taken out of the fridge, it's deep fried to get a super crisp outer skin. Then it's sliced and layered onto a house-made roll along with sliced sweet potato, pickled red onions, and a drizzle of pepper sauce. Crispiness is the name of the game here, and Fieri made sure to note that both the crunchiness of the roll and the crispy pork skin all work wonders for this authentic sandwich. If a sandwich claims to be full of both razzmatazz and pizzazz, you know you're in for quite a treat. Those are the exact words that came out of Oko Kitchen and Bar head chef Mark Steele's mouth while he was explaining his culinary creation called the East Coast Donair. Guy Fieri traveled all the way to Ottawa, Canada to try the sandwich, and he wondered what he was getting himself into after Steele's explanation. The Canadian East Coast Donair is the restaurant's unique take on everyone's favorite classic Greek sandwich, the gyro, but instead of lamb, ground chuck stands in its place. The beef is seasoned with garlic powder, onion powder, smoked paprika, salt, pepper, and cayenne. Once seasoned, the meat is rolled out onto a sheet pan and placed into the oven. The sauce drizzled on top of the final product consists of evaporated milk, condensed milk, fresh garlic, sugar, and vinegar to thicken it. A pita is then tossed onto the grill along with strips of the cooked meat. Once everything develops a nice char, the bread is slathered with garlic butter, and then on goes the beef, shredded cheddar, lettuce, cherry peppers, sliced jalapenos, pickled red onions, and a hefty drizzle of the sauce. Fieri takes one messy bite and has nothing but compliments for the smiling chef. As much as we know that deep frying is probably the least healthy way to eat anything, we can't deny the wonders that happen when food takes a dunk in that sizzling oil jacuzzi. But when you double fry something, you give a whole new meaning to smiling stomach. You have something so crunchy that you can hear every bite from down the block. That's why Guy Fieri hopped behind the wheel of his classy red ride and headed straight to Soul Avenue Kitchen in Moorhead, Minnesota to loudly crunch his way through their double-fried chicken sandwich. The only thing he forgot to bring was earplugs. The preparation begins by dousing the chicken breasts in batter and then dunking them in a dredge full of spices. The chicken then enters the deep fryer for the first time. Once it's pulled out and cooled down, it takes a second glorious dip for an extra crispy outer shell. The condiments slathered on are lime aioli and a spicy Korean paste called samjang. And once they're applied, on goes a pile of kimchi, the chicken, and house pickles. The sandwich is teeming with ingredients, but Fieri manages to grab it with two sturdy hands and take a bite. The verdict? Nothing but love.
That is super crunchitacious.
Usually when Guy Fieri arrives at a restaurant and the chef describes to him what they're making, he's excited to see exactly how the plan unfolds. It's less common that he'll wear a look of sheer puzzlement after the explanation. But when he visited Bunk Sandwiches and tried a salt cod sandwich, he was left scratching his head. Nevertheless, he appreciates the weirdly unique, so he arrived amped to take his first bite and see why everyone was raving about it. The words salt cod don't exactly conjure up a delicious picture, but this sandwich turns that unsightly image on its head. Before the fish cooks, it sits in water for multiple days to pull out the high amount of salt that coats it. Once it's ready, it's cooked in a pot of milk, garlic, and thyme until the meat starts to flake off the bones. The cod meat and mashed potatoes are then pureed into a thick paste before being slathered onto a toasted roll. Placed on top of the puree is a tuft of salad consisting of parsley, red onion, oil-cured black olives, slices of fried Spanish chorizo, red wine vinegar, and a glug of olive oil. Fieri is definitely surprised by the sandwich's unique flavor, but he's nevertheless pleased.
I don't even know if I want to call it gourmet. I want to call it funkalicious.
That's right.
In nearly every episode of Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives, Guy Fieri rolls solo, eager to keep all the dishes he tries to himself, while everyone else in the room looks at him with a fiery jealousy. But in one particular episode, he brought along fellow chef Justin Warner, and the two good friends visited a place called Urban Chislic in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Warner had only one thing in mind after linking up with his spiky-headed pal, the UC BBQ Pork Sandwich. The first step is the creation of the barbecue sauce base, which packs an umami punch. bunch with ingredients like soy sauce, molasses, and liquid smoke. After the sauce is thoroughly mixed, cubes of pork are tossed into a deep fryer to sizzle while a homemade slaw is mixed with green and purple cabbage, mayo, honey mustard, and a house-made dry rub. Once fried to perfection, the pork is placed on a flat grill, doused in sweet barbecue sauce, and covered in Swiss cheese. After the pork, slaw, and a handful of crispy onions are piled onto a toasted bun, Fieri and Warner take a bite, and they're blown away by the flavor.
That's lights out, bro.
Is there such a thing as too much meat on a sandwich? Not if you're a carnivore through and through. If that describes you, then you've got to head to ZZQ in Richmond, Virginia. When Guy Fieri arrived there with an appetite the size of Texas, he was thrilled that the barbecue joint offered up an enormous sandwich called the Tres Hombres to satisfy his own carnivorous cravings. Brisket, sausage, and pulled pork are the three glorious meats packed into the Tres Hombres, and each one glistens with run-down-your-chin fatty flavors. The first meat the chef prepares is a huge slab of pork butt. He slathers it in yellow mustard, coats it in dry rub, and then into the oven it goes. Then he does the same thing to an even bigger piece of brisket. Once both slabs finish cooking, the meticulous piling job begins. The sausage is sliced and layered onto the bottom bun. The pulled pork is then placed on top of that, and the whole thing's topped off with brisket, pickled red onions, and a dousing of homemade sauce. Needless to say, the end product is a monster, but Fieri manages to dig in for a very messy bite. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more mashed videos about your favorite food shows are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.